What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and today in this video I'm going to be reviewing the Smashing Pumpkins' Adore, their fourth main album, and we have a lot to talk about with this album. We're going to be doing it the same way as we've done all the other albums. I'm going to talk about the history on the album as a whole, what it sounds like, its messages, what I feel about the album, what I think about it. Then we're going to talk about every single song. I'm very, very excited to review this album. I've been listening to it this entire past week. I've been reading the lyrics and listening to stuff, so I really do love this album. I think maybe that's the first thing I should say. This is a fantastic album, and I talked in the Melancholy in the Infinite Sadness review that I would say Melancholy is my favorite album, but it changes every single time I listen to really any of the four albums that I said are my favorite of the Smashing Pumpkins. Adore is such an amazing album. So is Machina 2. So is Siamese Dream. Really all of them are, but those are the main four, is Siamese Dream, Melancholy, Adore, and Machina 2. For me, those are my top four. And they switch all the time, every time I listen to them. But Adore has just such a different thing going for it, right? The history of it, what was happening in the band at that time, the sounds, the meaning and messages that Billy Corgan was writing. I think this is probably the best written album he's ever done. And that's just from the songs we got on the album. Sure, they're not all perfect, and obviously there was a lot of stuff that happened at the time, but the writing, I think, and the meaning and the stories he tells, I think are probably the best he's ever written, and that's just the songs they made on this album. So let's talk about this album a little bit. Adore released on June 2nd, 1998, so it's about to turn 20 years old in a couple weeks. We're going to be super busy on the channel. I would love to have done a 20-year anniversary something. Maybe I could, but I don't know. I really would like to. I'll probably tweet about it or something. I'm sure I'll listen to it that day just to kind of celebrate its anniversary. I love anniversaries, but I don't think there'll be anything on the channel. But we can go back and talk about Adore in the future too, because I just absolutely adore this album. So it was obviously released June 2nd, 1998. This was a bad time for the Smashing Pumpkins. I mean, when have they had just a normal album, right? When did any of the past, whenever they were recording, when was it all just super nice and easy and calm, right? This is no different, and this could have been about as bad as it gets. In terms of, they had just done Melancholy and Infinite Sadness in 1995, sold amazing, launched them into, Siamese Dream is oftentimes viewed as the best album they've ever made, but Melancholy sold the most. Worldwide, they had a massive, like year and a half to 2-year tour, so it was huge. I mean, they were on top of the world, literally, and Adore was so looked forward to by everybody. It was one of the most anticipated albums of 1998 leading into it coming out. And so they were on top of the world. And then the Jimmy Chamberlin stuff happened, right? The overdose, he got fired from the band, Billy Corgan kicked him out. They all really kicked him out. And it was just the three of them. And obviously their piano player died as well. So they went through so much. They didn't have Jimmy Chamberlin for this album because he was fired. He went to rehab, went through all that stuff for the alcohol. And so while it was such a depressing time for them as a group, when you go back and you watch interviews, it actually also feels like the time where you would have the most confidence in them. And that's super weird, but looking back at it now, and it's super sad. It actually is very sad. But looking at it now, if you watch interviews of them in 1998, just the three of them, Darcy, James, and Billy, when they're talking about Jimmy, or they're talking about themselves, they talk about how it's the three of us, and we have to stick together, and this is it. We are the Smashing Pumpkins, we're together, and that's all there is to it. Like, we're a family, and we're a group, and this is the way it's going to be now. And when you watch them and you hear them say all those things, it sounds super promising, even though it's just such a bad time for all of them. And for the whole band, right? Even if you include Jimmy. And clearly it does not get better. That's the worst part, is they bring Jimmy back and then Darcy leaves. And we'll talk about that in the next video, which will just be Machina 1 review. I'm going to review Machina 1, and I'm going to review Machina 2. But so it was a mixed time. It was a mixed time of kind of feeling hopeful, but also really not. And that's just part of it. I mean, Billy's mom died, and that is a massive influence on this album. His mom, Martha, died of brain cancer, so that is a huge thing. It appears so many times in these songs. We'll talk about that. He was also going through a divorce, and so, I mean, just so much was happening. Divorce, mother. The band continued to not function that well. They had rented out a house to record in and to live in, but James never really liked the idea and never really went. And so maybe Darcy and Billy bonded a little bit there, but they were not that cohesive. Oftentimes it would go back to Billy just being by himself in the writing process. But again, at the same time, it also felt so hopeful because you see them sometimes in videos in like the recording studio where they're all together working, and I like that. It's just a cool environment. And the influences of this time and the influences of where the Smashing Pumpkins were going were definitely felt all throughout this album. I mean, synthesizers galore, right? Drum machines, simple drum beats, more like electronica instead of the heavy, distorted guitars and the extremely fast and drums you can really hear and really, really like. Those were gone. And we had been getting previews of that leading up to this. The ending of the Melancholy album, the second part of it, kind of goes into a more softer tone. And this was after we had I and The End is the Beginning is the End, which was a song, both of those songs were on movie soundtracks that the Smashing Pumpkins made, and they were those kind of songs. I mean, you could very much see how they went into this kind of style. And, and there was a lot of songs cut out. They originally wrote and had over 30 songs. They wanted to make this another double album. That seems to be a reoccurring thing with Billy Corgan, wanting, obviously having Melancholy be a double album, but really making more songs than Melancholy and wanting another double album with Adore that was ultimately turned down. And then obviously Machina, he wanted it to be Machina 1 and Machina 2 and have them be a double album, and the recordings, they said no. The studio said no. So that sucks, and obviously that happened the way it happened. But Adore, we missed out on a lot of really good songs. There's a song Waiting, there's Set the Ray to Jerry. I mean, there's a lot of fantastic songs that you can find online. Waiting was a song that I truly loved, and you cannot find it on YouTube anymore, and that's disturbing to me, but it's a really, really good song. And then there's one of my personal favorites, one of the best songs I think they've ever made, is Let Me Give the World to You, which was recorded with Rick Rubin at the time, the only song he helped record, and then ultimately scrapped and not used for Adore, and then re-recorded for Machina 2, which I love the Machina 2 version, but then when you listen to just the pure version for Adore, it's fantastic. Both the versions are super, super good. I think I like the Adore version better, but that is a song that is just so good and so special. And it sucks that it didn't make it on Adore, because I think it easily could have fit on Adore really, really easily, and then pushed off one of maybe some of the weaker songs kind of in the middle of the album. Like I said, the album is super strong writing-wise, but in terms of the music, some of the songs do get a little boring. So a song like Let Me Give the World to You, very, very powerful, super catchy, really like the guitar and all that stuff. So that would have fit perfectly, but that was it. That was the band at the time. They went on the tour for this album. It was much, much shorter than they did, although they played the biggest show ever, I think in Minnesota, right? It had over 100,000, 110,000 people. It was a free show, and that was the biggest crowd they'd ever gotten. Massive show, really, really cool. But they toured, they had multiple musicians. He brought in a lot of percussionists that played along with their drummer. So there was a lot going on, and on that tour they played completely for free. All the money they made went to charities for wherever they went, and I think they raised over $4 million for charities back in 1998. They raised over $4 million. So that's awesome, and that's really, really cool. They paid for everything out of their own pockets. All that touring stuff they paid for, and I mean, it's easy to imagine the time because they just came off of Melancholy, which was the biggest thing literally ever. So they had a lot of money at the time, but that's super cool that it happened. So that's the history. The history of Adore is so fascinating. And like I said, all these influences make it into these songs. These songs are dark. These songs are depressing. These songs are a little bit stranger. They're not so much about, I was going to say they're not so much about grief. They really are. They're about exes, and they're about his mother, and they're about pain and suffering, and which is a lot of what Melancholy was. But Melancholy, he portrayed it all by screaming and shouting and really loud guitars and in-your-face music and instruments. And in this album, he goes completely different. A lot of these songs are driven just by piano. I think like 5 songs are just piano. It's piano, his voice, the acoustic guitar. Very few of these are driven by electric instruments. I mean, Ava Adore is probably the only one that is very, very heavy. And in a way, it's so early in the album that you kind of forget that it existed by the time you start getting into it. But super into the synthesizers, super into the electronica all throughout this album. And to be honest, I really like it. Now at the time, this split the fan base straight down the middle. I mean, they lost a lot of people at this time because it did not sell that well. It sold over 4 or 5 million copies, which is a lot, but not as much as Melancholy. And this definitely divided the fan base. They lost a lot of people, and I can see why? I mean, and you go and you read comments about people that were around 20 years ago that were into the band, and you can read it for yourselves. I mean, it was such a shocker that they went from melancholy to this. You know, such a night and day. Night and day that they would turn around and produce this. And even when you're listening to it, if you listen to them in chronological order, you're like, geez, this is so different. And that's personally why I love the Smashing Pumpkins. Maybe more than anything is literally every album sounds completely different. And I love that freedom. And I love that Billy Corgan was able to do that, and he just makes the album. You know, and Adore, and whether you think of Adore as that way because of all that bad stuff that happened, or whether you think of Adore in that way for some other reason, it doesn't necessarily matter. It just matters that he made it, and it sounds so different from all the other albums. And at the time, that was obviously a major, major turnoff. A lot of people hated this album. But nowadays, it's definitely back. I mean, whatever Smashing Pumpkins fans are left really do love this album, and whenever he plays any of these songs, people love them. When he plays them live, when he went on one of the acoustic tours or whatever, he had a huge, I think one of the very first ones back in like 2015, he would have like a 10-song set of just Adore songs, and people loved it. People freaked out on it because right now it's like a cult hit, right? That people are sorry that they hated it back then. And maybe if they didn't hate it back then, it would do something now. But I love this. I love this album a lot. I really like a lot of the sounds on it. I like how it's very depressing even. Like if you just listen to this, you'll either like fall asleep in a good way. You'll fall asleep, or you'll just kind of feel down because this album is dark. It's dark, and once you know what the songs mean, they're even darker. And that sucks in a way, but it's also really, really clever and amazing. And then like the last history part, I guess, is I really like his voice. You know, it's not the screaming. It's not the really nasally him. Now, I love the nasally voice, and that's the biggest drawback of the band, is you have to like Billy Corgan's singing style. And it's very different, and it's very, you know, a lot of people don't like it. But it's not bad if you hate it. Normally, I think you can get by listening to this album because he really doesn't let that get in the way. He really, and even in documentaries talking about him making the album, he really tried. He really focused on his singing in this album, and that's really cool because at the time he was like 30, 31 years old, and for him to, at that age, still be working on it is really, really cool. And you can tell, I mean, he sings a lot better on this album. I think this is the best song Billy Corgan has ever done. Now, that doesn't mean it's the best. I like his nasally stuff from like Machina or Melancholy. I like that, even Zeitgeist. But in terms of pure singing, I think this is the only one he really does anything is in Ava Adore. So, that's the album as a whole. Love it, adore it. I'm going to keep using that word because I like that word a lot, but that's the album name as well, so it gets a little confusing. So that's the history. That's what I think about the whole thing. It's a long album. It's 16 songs. It's over like 73 minutes. So let's get into every single song on this album. Starting with number 1 is To Sheila, which is really talking about what somebody else means to him. It's a really, really good song to start off this album. And it really sets the scene because, again, if you put yourself back there, back in that time period, you're going to go into the album and then all of a sudden this is the first song you hear from them. The last songs you heard were the Melancholy songs, and now all of a sudden you're hearing To Sheila, which is starts off very, very quiet. Love his voice. Twilight Fades, like that is so good. And you hear the acoustic guitar playing, and it's a fantastic song. It's one of my favorite songs on the album. It's a really good way of starting the album. I guess it really does set the stage for what the rest of the album is. Now, if you didn't know that going in, you're gonna kind of be caught off guard. Love it when he plays it live. He doesn't play it live all that much, but he has been playing it more live recently. But it's a fantastic song. And the beginning of this album is very, very good. The second song is Ava Adore, which, I mean, I love this song. It's a really cool song to play on the guitar. Obviously, a lot of super weird sounds going on in there, and then that one is more of the electronic rock. I mean, that definitely is more in your face. He is louder. He is more energetic, I guess you can even say. But there are just a lot of sounds going on with the guitar. I love the music video of like kind of the one shot, just the camera constantly moving around that set. Really, really cool to see how they pulled it off. Really, really cool music video, and really talking about all the feelings that people can have. Feeling things for somebody that you care about, feeling like there's a gun to your head, feeling like you need to drink mercury, right? How he talks about that. So having all of these feelings and knowing that you can have all these feelings, and even somebody that's like a really, really good person can still have these terrible thoughts in them, and that's really what the song is about. And I really, really like that. And obviously, we're still early enough in the album where that really kicks it off. That really has it really makes it more energetic, and then it slows it down with Perfect, which is one of my favorite songs probably ever by them. Probably my favorite song on this album. There's a couple other songs that are pretty close to it, but I think Perfect is my favorite song. When you hear it, it is talking more about a breakup. It's talking about really what a couple used to be like, and talking about what they are when they see each other and going through that. More of a breakup ex song than actually, and talking about how they promised they'd be perfect. And talking about how they would be together. So it's more along that. I like to think of it from the more positive way of thinking about it, but really at the time and how Billy Corgan is writing it, that is how the song was designed. But absolutely love it. I mean, I love the guitars. I love his voice. Obviously written as a successor to 1979. It was the second part of that. Really about like a lack, like wanting hope. And 1979 obviously being growing up. That's what that song was about. It was about him really growing up in 1979. And then Perfect was talking about when they're adults and they have kids and everything. And they had a lot of parallels in the music video to the same kind of people that they had in 1979. But really amazing song. Like super amazing song, and the sounds, just all the background synthesizers that's going on in that song. I mean, that's a really beautiful song, and I love his voice. His voice is really, really calming, basically through the entire song. Like I said, it's easily my favorite song in the entire album. The next song is Daphne Descends, and this song is a little bit different in terms of it's not as good. I mean, the first three songs in this album I feel like are really, really powerful, and then you get to Daphne Descends, and it really changes up. I mean, the style of how the music is played with the drums and with everything else, you start to get more of a sense of what this album is, and Daphne Descends really kind of, I think, characterizes what the middle of the album feels like, which is a lot of just his voice, a lot of sadness in his voice, but with a lot of just weird sounds going on, a lot of different kind of drum tones. Again, because a lot of them are drum machines, and a lot of them are just, I think they use like 4 different drummers on this entire album. So it gets a little messy. But Daphne Descends about really loving somebody, but knowing that it's not going to work at the end of the day. And it's a good song. I really do like the song. It's just a very different change, and I always feel bad for any band, when I do these reviews. If there's a song that I love and it's my favorite song on the album, basically any song that comes after it is going to kind of suffer from it, I think, because it comes right after it and you're expecting to keep that high and then it drops. And so that's what happens with that. Once Upon a Time is number 5, and this is a really, really nice song. I really like the music in the background. I like the guitar work. I really like his voice. He's talking to his mother, and it's really, really cool because it almost sounds like a dialogue going back and forth between them. How he's talking about how he's tired, how he's given up, and how he's tried to get by without her, and how she responds to him. And it's a beautiful song, and when you think about it from that way that he's literally talking to her and she's talking back to him, it's a sad song. It's a really sad song, and it's really the first one at this point of the album. At this point of the album that you really get talking about his mother, and then we get there obviously throughout the rest of this album, but this is really the first one geared, I think, specifically to his mom. Tear is next, and this song was actually also one of the songs when they did the deluxe edition of the album, in terms of that it was pretty much like just pure, just him singing it. You can find that for a couple of the songs, or like I said, like the Rick Rubin kind of stuff for Let Me Give the World to You. This is another song like that, and this song is pretty dark too. It's about somebody who's dying, who in basically a car crash, but who's dying and dies, and how they know it, and how they kind of see the light fading away, and they're okay with it, and they know it. But then obviously there's the other person, right? There's the man who's with the girl, who has to go through all that stuff and know that she's dying, and eventually has to get over it, and how she's tearing herself from him. Super long song, and I really love the lyrics, and it's very emotional. I mean, it's an emotional song. He really extends a lot of notes in this song, and I do like it. It is one of my more favorite songs, especially after kind of reading up on it and seeing what it's about. But it's not my absolute favorite, but it's definitely a really solid song in the middle. I just think maybe it gets hurt just a little bit because of how long it is, especially with the fact that this album is just a really long album. Crestfallen is next, and Crestfallen, when I've been reading the lyrics to Crestfallen, there seems to be a mix of what people think Crestfallen is about. Firstly, the song is, again, another very slow song, another very emotional song. A lot of these songs kind of sound the same not because they are the same, because they're very, very different, but they just have that same kind of, again, the drum, whatever the drum is doing in the background, whatever those extra noises are, and then just his voice. And so they can kind of get lost and try to kind of translate it into another. But Crestfallen, I've seen from people, either one of two things, is Billy Corgan or the person not feeling like they deserve somebody else. And then another person I was reading was talking about how it's not really not deserving, it's about being sarcastic when he's like, who am I to need you now, and all that kind of stuff. Really, like, you know, like put offish, like, oh, I'm sorry that I need you when I'm down, like to pick me up, sorry, that kind of thing, like that kind of sarcastic, angry, moody kind of thing. And he does have that kind of vocal presence in the song. He kind of does sing it like that. So I would side with that argument. And again, the lyrics, even for the weaker song, and I honestly would consider Crestfallen a weaker song, just like I would consider Daphne Descends one of the weaker songs on this album. But even the weak songs have fantastic words, have fantastic meaning. So I definitely really like this song. Apples and Oranges are next. Oranges spelled with a J instead of a G. I don't really understand the reference to that one. But this song is very, very different. It's a little bit more energetic, again, with the drum machine going on in the background and just a lot of electronic noises going on in the song. But this song with the what if the sun didn't shine, what if the wind didn't blow, what if the earth refused its turn, all that, what if the clock stopped ticking, all this kind of stuff. And again, reading the lyrics and reading what people have thought about it, I do kind of get the sense of a lot of people have connected it, again, to his mother, being like, you know, what if all this stuff happens? It could. Any of these stuff, I guess, could. But it's more about that you have to get through it. It's not really what if it happens, is all of these things, what if, what if, what if, what if, but you have to be able to conquer it, right? You have to be able to get by it. And that's a big part, a lot of with this album. It's not just so much about him being depressed and him talking about his ex-girlfriends and his mother dying, dead. It's not really so much about that. It's about that, and it's about the journey he's gone through to get past that he's still working on it, that it's hurting him, that it pains him. This is a depressing time for him. And to add on to what he's always had throughout his entire life, you know, he almost killed himself when he was recording Siamese Dream. So I mean, this is a guy who's, you know, who's had problems, and for all this stuff to add up, it shows that he's working on it, right? And that brings its, you know, that will come back in songs in the future. Pug is next, and I really, really like Pug. I like the background. I like the going back and forth with the noises, how it jumps back and forth. But that is really about two people that are very far away, and in a way, kind of liking the time or being or using the time they have wisely, and being okay with each other and loving each other when they're together, you know, inside where it's warm, all that kind of stuff. But the fact that, you know, he driving me miles, he references that too, so very long distance, and when they get together, everything's good, but that takes a toll on both of them. The fact that they have to keep leaving and coming back and leaving and coming back. So that's meaning that I really do like this song. It's a little dark. The bass is super, super loud. If you have it too loud in the car, everything kind of like shakes, but it's a really powerful, much louder song than most songs on this album. Now, The Tale of Dusty and Pistol Pete is the next song, and I love this song. I'd say this is probably my second favorite song on the album. When he was, again, going to do the Adore set list, he tweeted, this was back when he had Twitter, and he tweeted what songs you'd like to hear from Adore that you would want him to play. And I tweeted Perfect, and I tweeted this, because I love this song. This song is super good with the guitar, super good with his voice. It's just so good. And then when you read it, it's based on a true story of this guy, Pistol Pete, who ends up killing this girl, Dusty, that he likes, and that she haunts him, but he doesn't know that she's a ghost. He actually thinks she's there. And it's about that. And that is pretty awesome. And they reference that when he holds her down, and basically killing her. But it's super, it's like depressing and kind of like scary, even when you think about it from the story, that you're basically listening to a tale of two people that like each other, but this guy ends up killing her, and then she keeps coming back and haunts him, and she's still there, right? And he talks about her screaming and stuff like that. And based on a true story, however true the story is, the song is a really fantastic story that I really, really like, and overall just one of the best songs I think on this album, the second best for me. Annie Dog is next, and this song is very slow, piano driven, and then also drums, and super like depressing. Like it almost sounds like it hurts him to sing the song. Now, when I first started listening to Adore, I would always skip the song because I didn't like his voice. Because his voice is like lower. Like again, he doesn't care. And by now, I actually really, really like this. But like once it starts picking up, once the drums come in, the song is really, really good. And people have again kind of put it back to he had a girlfriend that people have kind of related to this. And even in an interview back in the day, he said that this was a song written about someone he used to like. So that's basically what the song is. Again, very slow, the piano and basically drum driven. It could just be too dark. It could just be too dark and too depressing at this point of the album. I really like the song, but again, it took me a while. This was a song that I really had to listen to over and over before I started to like it. Shame is next, and Shame has a really... Firstly, Shame is a depressing and long and stretched out song with the drums pretty much just being like the hi-hat and the kick drum. Then you got the guitar being pretty simplistic overall and really not a lot of lyrics. It is a long song. I think it's over 6 minutes long, but there's not a lot of words, and he repeats the same words over and over. And it's about shame in both ways. It's about someone who feels defeated, who feels down, who feels like not understood. And he's not only talking about himself, but he's talking about anybody. But the song also is about getting over that and overcoming that, not letting it get you down. And he mentions that in the song. And that's really cool because it actually sends a pretty positive message of this feeling of feeling shameful, having to walk on home and all that stuff, but also not letting it get to you. Now, that's what he says even, right? Don't let it get to you. And I really, really do like that message. And this is a really fantastic song. Again, the end of this album is pretty unique because it has more sounds that he's messing with, but it's also really stretched out music and very depressing. But I really like the message to this, the dual meaning to this. The next song is Behold the Nightmare, and this song is probably my third favorite song of the album. I think this is actually, I may have included this in what I tweeted Billy Corgan as well when he asked for the songs. I love this song, and he has played it recently. I think on the last tour he went on, he would play it on piano. And while I would not prefer it on piano, I think he has played it on guitar before, especially back in 1998. I do love this song. And it literally is talking about beholding the nightmare, really being like having people see what he's going through. And it's about his mother again, really talking about, he keeps talking about how he can't keep digging her grave, like the roses from her grave. He can't keep doing that. So it's really another song of, like, look at what I'm dealing with, having lost her, but I can't keep doing this forever. I have to move on. Like, I have to get over it. And that's really what this song is about. And that's the nightmare, right? That it's going to keep happening, and he's going to be stuck in that mood and that mindset forever. I think that's just a fantastic song overall, and it continues. The end of this album and the beginning is super, super strong. The middle is where it is a little bit weaker, but the lyrics, I think, really carry the middle of this album. Then we get to For Martha, which is his mom's name, Martha, and this song is written just quite frankly out to her, talking about her leaving, talking about how he's going to see her again someday. I will follow you and see you on the other side. So he's, eventually he's going to die and he'll be able to be with her again. And that, it's a sad and dark song. Super long, very piano driven. And then the second half of the song really hits you with the guitars, and then the end of the song really keeps going and kind of drags on, but like purposely so. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful song. He played this on piano in his last tour. He has more fun with it now, even talking about like if people are talking in the crowd and he's playing it after he's done, he'll be like, or even before that, he'll say like, I think a song about my dead mother will like lower the tone of this group. So he's made that reference before. So I think he has a little bit more fun with it now, but it's definitely a heartfelt letter to his mom, which is really, really powerful. The 15th song is Blank Page, which is so good. Blank Page is such a fantastic song. Very piano heavy, very dark, again, like dreamy kind of electronic music. We're talking about Blank Page being all the rage, and it's really talking about how giving somebody like a letter or not saying anything, giving them a blank page is more powerful than saying anything to them. Just that feeling of nothingness, receiving it is more powerful than anything, but it's such a fantastic song to end the album. Really, to end the album, I consider it the ending of the album. It's the last time you hear them sing. That's the last time you're going to hear them until we get to the Machina days. And then we get to song 16 on the album, which is called 17. And it's 17 seconds of just instrumentals, which really, it's only like 4 or 5 seconds of instrumental. The reason it's called 17 is because it's 17 seconds of music. He even wrote a poem, Billy Corgan, which is on like the booklet of Adore, talking about everything for 17 seconds to whatever, 17 seconds, and that's the poem he wrote, and that's the meaning of the song. Really cool, really cool. There's no point to really listen to it because there's really nothing there at all other than a couple like minor sounds, which are actually kind of like eerie and dark, but there's really no reason to listen to it. I guess just the connecting it back to the poem and having it be 17 seconds long, and that's why it's called 17, and also the poem being about 17, that's really cool. That's like a cool history part of this album. So that's it. That's the album. Fantastic album. Really, really love looking all this stuff up. Really like talking about it. So I hope you guys liked it as well. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of Adore. Next time, in 2 or 3 weeks, or whenever the next Pumpkins video is going to be out, we're going to review Machina 1, a very different album. Obviously, a ton of stuff happened in between Adore and Machina again, just like any other time. So we will be talking about the history, and we'll talk about Machina 1, and then we'll do Machina 2, and keep on going. We'll talk about Zwan, we'll do Zeitgeist, we'll do Oceania, and we'll do Monuments, and we'll go from there. And we'll do stuff after that as well. So thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you on the next video.